I used to think safety came from locked doors and carefully chosen company. Then a man I should have feared walked into my apartment uninvited, and I felt safe for the first time in months. He wasn't supposed to be there. The burger delivery guy, except he wasn't wearing a uniform, and his arms told stories in faded ink that decent people aren't supposed to read. Bald head catching the hallway light, tattoos crawling up his neck, a scar cutting through his eyebrow like a warning label. He saw the bruise on my wrist before I could hide it. He saw the unlocked deadbolt. He saw everything I'd been pretending wasn't there. He stepped inside, locked my door, and sat down at my kitchen table like he'd been invited to stay forever. "Eat," he said. "Then tell me who hurt you." I should have called the police. Instead, I sat down across from him. The moment I let that bald, tattooed stranger into my apartment was the moment everything changed, including me. You will feel so many emotions in this story of second chances and forbidden love. Please support us by clicking subscribe to the channel. I used to think safety came from locked doors and carefully chosen company. Then a man I should have feared walked into my apartment uninvited, and I felt safe for the first time in months. It was a Friday night in Seattle, the kind that smells like rain even when it's not falling. I'd worked a double shift at the coffee shop downtown. My feet ached, my lower back throbbed, and I had exactly enough energy left to order a burger and collapse on my secondhand couch. I didn't want to think, didn't want to check my phone and see another string of texts from Derek, didn't want to acknowledge that the bruise on my wrist had darkened from purple to an ugly greenish yellow that foundation couldn't quite cover anymore. The delivery app said 20 minutes. I changed into sweatpants and an oversized hoodie, pulled my hair into a messy bun, and tried to convince myself that tomorrow would be different. That's what I'd been telling myself for 3 months now, ever since I'd finally gotten the courage to break up with Derek, and he'd decided my decision wasn't actually final. When the knock came, I didn't look through the peephole. I was too tired, too numb. I just opened the door. The man holding my food wasn't wearing a uniform. He was tall, maybe 6'2", with the kind of solid build that comes from necessity, not vanity. Completely bald, his head catching the dim hallway light like polished stone. Tattoos covered his arms, crawling up from his wrists in black and gray patterns that disappeared under the sleeves of his plain black t-shirt. More ink traced up his neck, stopping just below his jawline. A scar cut through his left eyebrow, pale and raised against his skin. He was white, looked to be in his early 30s, and his eyes moved over my apartment with the systematic precision of someone trained to assess threats in seconds. Then those eyes landed on my wrist, the one I'd forgotten to cover because I'd been alone all day. "Your burger," he said, his voice low and careful. He held out the bag. I reached for it, already mumbling thanks, already moving to close the door. His hand caught the frame, not aggressive, not violent, just firm. "You didn't lock your door," he said. I blinked. "Excuse me." He stepped inside, not far, just enough to close the door behind him and turn the deadbolt with a decisive click. The sound echoed in my small apartment like a gunshot. "You're alone. It's late. And you didn't lock your door." I should have been terrified. This stranger, this tattooed man with scars and eyes that had seen too much, had just walked into my space without permission. But something in his voice didn't sound threatening. It sounded concerned, almost angry, but not at me. He walked past me, calm, controlled, and sat down at my kitchen table like he'd been invited. Like he belonged there. His tattooed hands folded on the scratched surface, and he looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. "I'm Jake," he said, "and I'm not leaving until you eat. Then you're going to tell me who put that handprint on your arm." My breath caught. The apartment suddenly felt smaller, the air thicker. I stood frozen by the door I could no longer reach, holding a paper bag that smelled like grease and salvation, staring at a bald stranger covered in ink who'd somehow seen what everyone else had been carefully ignoring for months. "I don't know you," I whispered. "No, but I know what it looks like when someone's trying to disappear. And you shouldn't have to." Something in my chest cracked open. I don't know why I sat down. Maybe because he didn't ask if I was okay. He already knew I wasn't. Maybe because for once someone was actually paying attention. Maybe because the way he looked at me didn't feel invasive. It felt like being seen for the first time in months. I unwrapped the burger with shaking hands. Jake didn't move, didn't speak, just watched me eat like it was the most important thing in the world. When I finally finished, he leaned back in the chair and waited. "My ex," I said quietly. "Derek. He won't leave me alone." Jake's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. He stood up, walked to my window, looked down at the street below. Then he checked the lock on my door again, tested the chain, examined the frame like he was cataloging its weaknesses. "I'll be outside tonight," he said, turning back to me. "He won't get near you." "Why would you do that?" I asked. "You don't even know me." Jake walked to the door, his hand on the knob. For a moment I thought he'd leave without answering. Then he looked back at me, and something in his scarred face softened just slightly. "Because I know what it looks like when someone's trying to disappear," he said again. "And you shouldn't have to." The door closed softly behind him. I sat at my kitchen table in the sudden silence, my heart pounding, my mind racing. Through my window, I watched a beat-up truck park across the street. Jake sat in the driver's seat, visible in the streetlight, his bald head unmistakable. He stayed there all night. Jake wasn't lying about staying outside. When I woke up Saturday morning and looked out my window, his truck was still there. I watched him for a few minutes. He was reading something, a book propped against his steering wheel, completely still except for the occasional turn of a page. At 7:30, he started his engine and drove away. I should have felt relieved. Instead, I felt exposed. My shift at the coffee shop started at 9. I kept checking over my shoulder on the bus, searching for Derek's silver Honda. It had become a ritual, this constant scanning, this low-grade panic humming under my skin every time I left my apartment. But today was different. Today I was looking for a beat-up truck with a bald man inside, and I couldn't decide if that made me smart or crazy. I found him at the bus stop 3 blocks from my building. He was leaning against a telephone pole, wearing the same black t-shirt, reading the same book. When I walked past, he didn't look up, didn't acknowledge me, just kept reading. But I knew he'd seen me, knew he was tracking every person who came within 10 feet of me. It should have scared me. Instead, I slept better that night than I had in weeks. Sunday morning, I did laundry at the coin op 2 streets over. Jake was there, folding clothes at a table in the back. We didn't speak. Monday, he was outside the coffee shop when I closed at 8. Tuesday, he followed my bus home at a careful distance. By Wednesday, his presence had become the most reliable thing in my chaotic life. Then the small protections started appearing. The broken lock on my apartment building's front door, the one that had been busted for 3 months, the one that let anyone walk right in, was suddenly fixed. I mentioned it to Mrs. Chen from 2B, and she just shrugged. Thursday morning, my car had a flat tire. By the time I came back from grabbing my phone to call for help, it was changed. Fresh tire, old one placed neatly in my trunk. No note, no explanation. Friday night. The sketchy guy who'd been following me from the bus stop for the past 2 weeks, the one who always stayed just close enough to make my skin crawl, was gone. Vanished. I didn't see him Saturday or Sunday either. By Monday, I was done pretending I didn't notice. I found Jake at the laundromat. He was reading again. Something philosophical with a cracked spine, the kind of book you read multiple times. I sat down across from him without asking permission. "Are you stalking me?" I said. He looked up. Those careful eyes met mine. "No, you're everywhere I am." "Stalking is what your ex does," he said calmly. "I'm making sure you stay safe." "What's the difference?" "Intent, control, fear." He set his book down, and I saw the title, Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. Stalking is about power over someone. Protection is about giving someone the space to breathe without looking over their shoulder. There was something in the way he said it. Precise. Like he'd memorized the distinction. Like he'd spent a long time learning the difference between those two things. "The building lock," I said. "My tire. That guy who was following me. You noticed." Hard not to. Jake folded his laundry with careful movements. Each shirt lined up perfectly. "Your building should have fixed that lock months ago. Your tire was going flat anyway. And that guy needed to understand that following women isn't acceptable." "You talked to him?" "Briefly." I almost smiled. "What did you say?" "That he should find a different route home. And he just agreed?" Jake's scarred eyebrow lifted slightly. People usually do when you ask politely. But I saw the subtext beneath his words. I saw the way his tattooed hands moved with controlled precision, the way his voice stayed level even when discussing threats. This wasn't a man who asked politely. This was a man who'd learned exactly how much force was necessary and how to apply it with surgical accuracy. "Why?" I asked. "Why are you doing this?" He looked at me for a long moment. "Because you needed help. And I was there. That's not a reason. It's the only reason that matters." My coworker Melissa caught me during my shift on Tuesday. She pulled me into the back room, her eyes wide with something between concern and fear. "That guy who's always around," she said. "The bald one with all the tattoos. Do you know him?" "He's a friend," I said carefully. "Emma." She bit her lip. "My boyfriend says he's seen him around the neighborhood for months. Says he keeps to himself, but people talk." "Talk about what?" "Just be careful." "Okay." But she wouldn't say more. And that night, when I tried to Google Jake Seattle tattoos, I got nothing useful. No social media, no online presence. Like he'd deliberately erased himself from the digital world or had never been part of it to begin with. Wednesday afternoon, Derek showed up at the coffee shop during the lunch rush. I was taking orders when I felt his hand close around my arm, the bruised one, the one that had finally started to heal. "We need to talk," he said, his voice tight with barely controlled anger. Customers were staring. My manager froze behind the register. I tried to pull away, but Derek's grip tightened. "Let go," I said. "Not until you stop ignoring my texts. Not until you stop acting like—" He didn't finish the sentence. Jake materialized between us like smoke, like he'd been waiting just outside for exactly this moment. He didn't touch Derek, didn't say a word, just stood there, solid and still, and something in his absolute silence made Derek's hand drop from my arm like I'd burned him. Derek took 2 steps back. "Who the hell are you?" Jake still didn't speak. Just looked at him. 5 seconds? 10? Derek's face went pale. He turned and walked out of the coffee shop, and I heard the bell chime above the door like punctuation. The lunch rush resumed. Customers ordered lattes. My manager went back to the register. Jake walked outside, got in his truck, and drove away. I finished my shift in a daze. When I clocked out at 4, my manager asked me to stay for a minute. Her face was pale, her hands shaking slightly as she poured herself coffee she didn't drink. "Do you know who that man is?" she asked quietly. "The bald one with the tattoos. He's been helping me with Derek." "Emma." She looked at me with something like pity. "He just got out of prison 6 months ago. Someone told me he was in for 9 years. The coffee shop suddenly felt too small, too bright. I heard myself say thank you, heard myself leave, but I was moving on autopilot. Outside, the Seattle rain had started, light and cold, soaking through my jacket as I walked to the bus stop. Jake's truck was parked across the street. He was sitting in the driver's seat, watching me. Our eyes met through the rain-streaked windshield. 9 years in prison, 9 years of his life. Gone. And he'd spent the last 2 weeks protecting a stranger who hadn't even known his last name. I crossed the street, knocked on his window. He rolled it down. Rain dripped off my hair onto his dashboard. "Is it true?" I asked. "Were you in prison?" Jake looked at me with those careful, assessing eyes. He didn't flinch, didn't look away. "Yes," he said, one word, simple, honest, devastating. "Why?" I whispered. "Because I hurt someone badly enough to lose 9 years of my life. And because I'm not that person anymore. But the world doesn't forget." The rain fell harder. I stood on the curb. He sat in his truck. And between us hung the weight of a truth that changed everything and nothing at all. "You should go home," he said quietly. "Lock your door. I'll make sure Derek doesn't come by." He started to roll up his window. I put my hand on the glass. "Don't disappear," I said. "Please." Something shifted in his expression. Surprise, maybe hope. He nodded once. The window closed. I walked to the bus stop, and his truck followed me home from a careful distance, just like always. That night, I found a note taped to my apartment door. Not Jake's handwriting. I'd never seen his, but somehow I knew. This was different. Angry, threatening. "Tell your ex-con to back off, or you'll both regret it." My hands shook as I pulled out my phone. I took a picture of the note. Then I texted Jake the photo. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally, this isn't Derek. Lock your door. I'm coming over. Jake arrived in under 10 minutes. I'd been pacing my apartment, the note still clutched in my hand, my mind spiraling through possibilities I didn't want to consider. When I heard his knock, 2 firm raps, distinctive and controlled, I yanked open the door without checking the peephole. He stepped inside and locked the deadbolt behind him. His eyes swept the apartment like he was searching for intruders, then landed on the note I was holding. "Let me see it," he said. I handed it over, watched his jaw tighten as he read. His tattooed fingers traced the handwriting with something like recognition, and my stomach dropped. "You know who wrote this?" I said. It wasn't a question. "Yeah." He folded the note carefully, deliberately. "It's not Derek." "Then who?" Jake walked to my window, looked down at the street. When he turned back, his face had settled into something resigned, almost peaceful, like he'd been expecting this conversation and had already prepared for it. "Before I answer that, you need to know exactly who I am. What I did. Because if I tell you who wrote this note, you'll want the whole story anyway." My mouth went dry. "Okay. Sit down." I sat on my couch. Jake remained standing, his back to the window, arms crossed over his chest. The tattoos on his forearms seemed to move in the dim light. Skulls and roses and script I couldn't quite read. Prison ink. The kind you get when time stretches out forever and your skin becomes a journal of survival. "My name is Jake Morrison," he said. "I'm 32 years old. I served 9 years at Monroe Correctional Complex for assault with a deadly weapon. I got out 6 months ago on good behavior. I'm on parole until I'm 35. The words fell between us like stones dropped in still water. I waited for the ripples. "I was 23 when it happened," he continued. "My little sister Rachel was dating this guy, Travis. Nice enough on the surface, charming, but he had a temper, and Rachel kept showing up to family dinners with bruises she couldn't quite explain. I confronted her about it. She defended him, said I didn't understand, that he was stressed, that he loved her." Jake's hands clenched and unclenched. A habit, I realized. Something he did to manage whatever was happening inside him. One night she called me at 2 a.m, crying so hard I could barely understand her. Said Travis had locked her in their apartment, said he'd broken her phone but she'd managed to use his while he was passed out drunk. I drove there in 15 minutes. Found her on the floor with a split lip and a black eye. Travis was awake by then, telling me to mind my own business, to get the hell out of his apartment. I could see where this was going, could feel the tragedy approaching like headlights in fog. "I hit him," Jake said flatly. "Once." He went down. And I didn't stop. I kept hitting him. Rachel was screaming at me to stop, and I couldn't hear her. I couldn't hear anything except this roaring in my head that said he'd hurt my sister and he'd do it again, and the only way to make sure she was safe was to make sure he couldn't get up. "Jake," I whispered. Fractured skull, broken jaw, 3 broken ribs, ruptured spleen. He was in the hospital for 2 weeks. I was arrested that night. My lawyer tried for a plea deal. Manslaughter, maybe probation, but the prosecutor wanted to make an example. Said I was a danger to society. Said men like me don't stop with 1 beating. His voice had gone distant, clinical, like he was reciting someone else's story. I had no priors. Character witnesses lined up around the block. Rachel testified that Travis had been abusing her for months. Didn't matter. The judge gave me 10 years. I served 9 with good behavior. The rain hammered against my window. My apartment felt impossibly small, filled with this man's history, this weight of violence and consequence. "Do you regret it?" I asked quietly. Jake looked at me directly. "Every single day. But I don't regret protecting her. I regret not finding another way. I regret letting my anger control me. I regret that Travis spent 2 weeks in a hospital bed, that his family had to watch him recover, that I proved his lawyer right when he said I was dangerous. Is Rachel okay?" Something softened in his face. "She's married now. 2 kids. Lives in Spokane. Her husband's a good man. She writes me letters every month, sends pictures of my niece and nephew. She's the reason I got through those 9 years without losing my mind." "Does she know you're here? That you're helping me?" "Yeah. I call her every Sunday. She says I'm doing what I should have done the first time, protecting someone without destroying myself in the process. I absorbed this, tried to reconcile the violent young man from his story with the careful, controlled person sitting in my apartment. They were the same person. They were completely different people. "Would you hurt me?" I asked. The question I'd been too afraid to voice. Jake's eyes held mine. "I'd die before I let anyone hurt you, including myself." The certainty in his voice made something in my chest ache. "So who wrote the note?" I asked. "His name is Cody Brennan," Jake said. "We were inside together for about 4 years. He got out 3 months before I did. He's not like me. Prison didn't rehabilitate him. It refined him, made him better at being what he already was. Which is dangerous, smart, vindictive. He has this philosophy that ex-cons should stick together, that the civilian world doesn't understand us, doesn't want us, so we should only associate with each other, form our own community. And you didn't agree." "No. I spent 9 years watching men like Cody convince themselves they had no choice but to stay broken. I refused to believe that. When I got out, I cut ties with everyone from inside except one guy who's genuinely trying to rebuild his life. Cody saw that as betrayal. The pieces clicked together. He saw you with me, saw you helping a civilian. Yeah, and to him, that means I've gone soft, forgotten who I am. He wants me to prove I'm still the person I was, still dangerous, still controlled by anger. Or what?" Jake's face hardened. "Or he'll hurt you to teach me a lesson." Fear spiked through me, cold and sharp. "We should call the police." "And tell them what? That an ex-con I knew in prison left a vaguely threatening note? They'll file a report. Maybe. Probably tell you to stay away from me, that I'm attracting the wrong element into your life. Which is true. That's not fair. It's reality." I stood up, walked over to where he was standing. Up close, I could see the details of his tattoos. A clock with no hands on his forearm, a quote in script around his wrist that read, "Know thyself." Prison philosophy permanently etched into his skin. "I'm not afraid of you," I said. "You should be. Most people are. I'm not most people." Something flickered in his expression. Hope, maybe. Or fear that I'd change my mind once the reality sank in. "Emma," he said quietly, "if you want me to walk away, I will. I'll make sure Derek leaves you alone first, get you set up with better locks, maybe talk to your building manager about security, but then I'll disappear. You'll never see me again." The offer hung between us. Clean. Simple. The safe choice. "No," I said. "No. I don't want you to disappear. You understand what you're saying? What it means to be associated with me. People will judge you. Your family, your friends, your coworkers. They'll think you're naive or desperate or damaged yourself. They'll wonder what's wrong with you that you'd choose someone like me. Let them wonder." Jake's hands came up, hovering near my shoulders but not quite touching. Like he wanted to reach for me but didn't trust himself to make contact. "Why?" he asked. "Why would you risk this?" Because when I looked at him, I didn't see a criminal. I saw someone who'd paid for his mistakes with 9 years of his life. Someone who'd learned exactly how much violence costs and decided never to pay that price again. Someone who fixed broken locks and changed flat tires and sat outside my apartment all night to make sure I was safe. "Because everyone told me to run," I said. "But when I look at you, all I see is someone who's trying to be better than his worst moment. And I think that's worth believing in." Jake's eyes closed briefly. When they opened, they were brighter, vulnerable in a way I hadn't seen before. "Okay," he said. "Then we do this together, but you need to be smart. Lock your doors, check your surroundings, don't go anywhere alone at night. Cody's not going to stop just because I ask him to. He's going to escalate until I respond the way he wants me to." "What way is that? With violence?" "That's the only language he understands. And if I speak it, I violate my parole and go back to Monroe for the rest of my sentence." My phone buzzed on the coffee table. We both looked at it. A text from Derek. "I saw your new boyfriend. Enjoy your ex-con. You deserve each other." Jake read it over my shoulder. His jaw tightened. "Forward that to me," he said. "And any others he sends, I'm documenting everything." "For what?" "For when things get worse. Because they will." He walked to my door, paused with his hand on the knob. Get some sleep. I'll be outside. Jake, I said. Thank you for telling me the truth. He looked back at me, and for just a moment, the careful control slipped. I saw the exhaustion underneath, the weight of carrying a violent past into an uncertain future. Thank you for not running, he said quietly. The door closed behind him. I locked the deadbolt, checked the chain, looked out the window. His truck took its usual spot across the street. My phone buzzed again. Another text, but not from Derek. Unknown number. Your boy's got you thinking he's changed. He hasn't. Men like us don't change. We just get better at lying. Ask him what he did to his cellmate in year 7. Then decide if you still want him around. My hands shook as I screenshotted the message. Sent it to Jake. His response came immediately. Cody. Block the number. He's trying to get in your head. Whatever he tells you is designed to make you doubt me. I stared at the message, at the threat underneath. Then I typed, did something happen in year 7? 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. Finally. Yes, but not what he's implying. I'll tell you tomorrow. Face to face. You deserve that. I didn't sleep that night. Just sat by my window, watching Jake's truck, wondering what truth was waiting for me in the morning and whether I was brave enough to hear it. Jake showed up at my apartment at 7 in the morning with coffee and dark circles under his eyes that matched mine. I let him in without a word, locked the door behind him, and sat on the couch waiting for whatever truth he'd come to deliver. He handed me the coffee, black with 1 sugar, exactly how I took it, though I'd never told him. He'd been paying attention. Year 7, he said, sitting in the chair across from me. My cellmate was a guy named Marcus, 20 years old, in for drug possession. First offense. He was small, quiet, scared, the kind of target predators look for in a place like Monroe. I wrapped my hands around the coffee cup, letting the heat anchor me. There was a group, Jake continued. 4 guys who ran protection rackets on the inside. They decided Marcus owed them. Money his family supposedly had. Marcus didn't have any family, didn't have anything. They didn't care. They cornered him in the laundry room one afternoon. By the time I found them, Marcus was on the ground and they were taking turns. My stomach turned. What did you do? I stopped them, put 2 of them in the infirmary. The other 2 ran. I got 6 months in solitary for it. Lost my good behavior credits. Had to start earning them over again. That's why I served 9 years instead of 8. But you protected someone. That's not how the system saw it. Violence is violence. Doesn't matter why. The warden told me I should have gotten a guard, should have done it the right way. But by the time I found a guard, Marcus would have been... Jake stopped himself. I made a choice. I'd make it again. I set down my coffee. Cody's trying to twist that into something ugly. Because to him, it proves I'm still violent, still dangerous, that I haven't changed, just gotten better at choosing my targets. He wants you to see me the way the parole board does. As someone one bad moment away from being exactly who I was at 23. Are you? The question came out sharper than I intended. Jake didn't flinch. I don't know, he said honestly. I spent 9 years learning to control my anger, learning to think before I react. But I can't promise I'll never have to make that choice again, between doing the right thing and staying within the rules. And if Cody comes after you, I don't know which side of that line I'll land on. It was the most honest answer anyone had ever given me. No false promises. No reassurances designed to make me feel safe rather than actually be safe. I'm asking you to stay, I said. Not just to protect me from Derek or Cody. I'm asking you to teach me what you know. How to handle this. I'm tired of being the person who needs saving. Something shifted in Jake's expression. Respect, maybe, or recognition. Okay, he said. But if I'm staying, you need to understand what that means. My parole officer is a guy named Martinez. I check in with him every Thursday at 4. I have a curfew. 11 on weeknights, 1 on weekends. I can't leave King County without permission. Can't associate with known felons, which means if Cody shows up, I have to walk away or risk violation. Can't own a weapon. Can't get arrested for anything, even a traffic ticket. One mistake and I go back inside for 3 more years. I understand. Do you? Because being around me means you're subject to all of that too. Martinez can show up at any time to verify my living situation, my employment, my associations. He'll ask you questions. Your name will be in a file. If you have any legal issues, parking tickets, custody disputes, anything, it'll affect my case. I hadn't considered that. The weight of his parole, the constant surveillance, the way the system would bleed into my life just by proximity. Where do you live? I asked. Studio apartment above a Vietnamese restaurant in Beacon Hill. It's small, clean, rent's cheap because the landlord doesn't care about my record as long as I pay on time. What about family? Besides Rachel? Parents died in a car accident when I was 19. Part of why I was so protective of Rachel, she was all I had left. No other siblings. A few cousins who stopped returning my calls after the trial. 9 years of isolation. 9 years of losing everyone except a sister who wrote letters. And now he was here, in my apartment, offering to teach me how to survive the danger he'd inadvertently brought into my life. We spent that Saturday together. Jake taught me practical things, how to check if someone's following you by making random turns and watching who adjusts their route, how to position yourself in public spaces so you can see exits, how to hold your keys as a weapon if necessary, though he emphasized that running was always the better option. Violence should be the absolute last resort, he said as we sat in a coffee shop that afternoon. Not because it's morally wrong, but because it's costly. Every fight you're in, even if you win, takes something from you, and you never get it back. Is that what prison taught you? Prison taught me that strong men don't prove their strength through violence. They prove it through restraint, through walking away when idiots try to provoke them, through protecting people without destroying themselves in the process. His tattooed hands wrapped around his coffee cup, and I noticed for the first time that his knuckles were scarred. Old damage, long healed, evidence of a younger version of himself who hadn't yet learned restraint. That evening, Jake took me to his apartment. It was exactly as he'd described, a single room above a Vietnamese restaurant, the smell of pho permanently embedded in the walls, a twin bed in one corner, a desk with a small lamp in another, bookshelves made from cinder blocks and wooden planks, filled with philosophy texts and GED study guides, no television, no computer. A flip phone charging on the desk, the kind you get when you can't afford a smartphone or don't trust yourself with internet access. This is it, he said, standing in the doorway like he was embarrassed. It's not much, but it was enough. I saw the discipline in the made bed, the organized books, the clean dishes in the tiny sink. I saw a man rebuilding his life one careful choice at a time. You're studying for your GED? I asked, looking at the guides. Already passed it, 8 months ago. Now I'm taking online courses through the community college, pre-engineering, thinking maybe I can get certified as a maintenance technician, something with my hands that pays decent. What about the warehouse job? Night shift maintenance, 11 to 7, pays $15 an hour. It's enough for rent, food, parole fees. Not much else, but I don't need much else. I picked up one of the philosophy books, Letters from a Stoic by Seneca. The pages were worn soft, certain passages underlined in pencil. You read a lot? I said. Prison library was the only place I felt human. So, yeah, I read everything I could get my hands on. Philosophy, mostly. Stoics, especially. They understood that you can't control what happens to you, only how you respond. I sat on the edge of his bed, the only place to sit besides the desk chair. Jake leaned against the wall, arms crossed, watching me take in his entire life in a single glance. Tell me about regret, I said. He was quiet for a long moment. Outside, Seattle traffic hummed. The restaurant below sent up the smell of basil and star anise. Regret is knowing you can't undo the past but having to live with the consequences anyway, he said finally. It's seeing your sister get married through letters because you can't get furlough to attend. It's missing your niece's birth, her first steps, her first words. It's watching your 20s disappear into concrete and razor wire while everyone you grew up with moves on with their lives. It's knowing that no matter how much you change, there'll always be people who see you as the worst thing you ever did. His voice cracked slightly on the last word. He cleared his throat, looked away. I stood up, crossed the small space between us, put my hand on his chest, felt his heartbeat through the cotton of his shirt. I see you, I said. Not what you did, not what people say you are. I see who you're trying to become. Jake's hand came up slowly, covered mine. His palm was rough, scarred, Warm. No one's touched me like that in 9 years, he whispered. Like what? Like I'm worth touching. Something in my chest broke open. I moved closer, and Jake's arms came around me carefully, like I was something fragile he was afraid to break. I felt his breath against my hair, felt the careful control in how he held me, felt the weight of 9 years of isolation in the way he didn't quite let himself relax into the embrace. We stood like that for a long time. Not kissing, not crossing any lines, just existing in the same space without fear or judgment. It felt like the most honest thing I'd experienced in years. My phone buzzed in my pocket. We both pulled back. I checked it. Derek, you're making a mistake. That guy's dangerous. I'm just trying to protect you. I showed Jake. He read it, his jaw tight. He's ramping up, Jake said, positioning himself as the reasonable one, making me look like the threat. You're not a threat. To you, no. But on paper, ex-con with a violence conviction hanging around his ex-girlfriend, that plays very differently. Before I could respond, there was a knock at Jake's door. 3 sharp raps, official sounding. Jake's entire body went rigid. That's Martinez. Your parole officer? Yeah, he doesn't usually do home visits on Saturdays. Something's wrong. Jake opened the door. Martinez stood in the hallway, a tired-looking man in his 50s with gray hair and a wrinkled suit. His eyes moved from Jake to me, assessing. Morrison, he said. We need to talk. And you, he looked at me, are Emma Santos, correct? My stomach dropped. Yes. I need you to step outside for a moment. This is between me and my parolee. Jake's face had gone carefully blank. She can stay. She's a friend. That's what we need to talk about, Martinez said. Someone filed a complaint this morning. Claims you're harassing a woman. If this is true, you're going back inside. The world tilted. Jake's eyes met mine, and I saw the resignation there. The acceptance that no matter how hard he tried, his past would always find a way to drag him back. Mr. Martinez, I said quickly, Jake isn't harassing me. He's been helping me with a stalking situation involving my ex-boyfriend. I asked him for help. Martinez pulled out a small notebook. And you're sure about that? You're not being coerced or threatened. I'm sure. Jake's been nothing but respectful and protective. Martinez looked between us, his expression unreadable. The complaint is anonymous, but it's detailed. Claims Morrison has been following you, waiting outside your building, showing up at your workplace. That true? Yes, but then we have a problem. Intent doesn't matter. Behavior matters. And right now, Morrison's behavior looks like stalking, even if you're saying it's not. Jake's hands clenched at his sides, the careful control starting to crack. Who filed the complaint? He asked. Anonymous tip line. Could be anyone. Could be your ex. Martinez looked at me, or could be someone else who's noticed the pattern. Either way, I have to investigate. Morrison, you're going to need to come down to my office Monday morning. Bring any documentation you have. Texts, emails, anything that proves Miss Santos asked for your involvement. I can provide all of that, I said. Good. Because if I can't verify this story, Morrison's going back to Monroe pending a full hearing, and this time, he won't get out. Martinez left. The door closed. Jake stood frozen in the middle of his small apartment, and I watched 9 years of careful rebuilding crack under the weight of one anonymous complaint. Cody, I whispered. He did this. Yeah, Jake said quietly. And he's just getting started. Martinez's office was a fluorescent-lit box in downtown Seattle that smelled like burnt coffee and institutional despair. Jake and I sat across from him Monday at 9, a manila folder between us containing every text Derek had sent me, every screenshot of his threats, a written statement from my building manager about the broken lock, and a timeline I'd created documenting Jake's help. Martinez flipped through it with the expression of a man who'd seen every manipulation tactic inmates could devise and wasn't impressed by any of them. This helps, he said finally, but it doesn't resolve the core issue. Morrison, you know the conditions of your parole. You're supposed to avoid situations that could be perceived as threatening. Following women, even with permission, looks bad. So I should have let her ex-boyfriend continue stalking her, Jake asked quietly. You should have told her to call the police, to get a restraining order, to handle it through proper channels. Martinez leaned back in his chair. Look, Morrison, I believe you're trying to do the right thing, but you're putting yourself in situations where your good intentions won't matter if things go sideways. And now someone's actively trying to get you violated. It's someone from inside, Jake said. Guy named Cody Brennan. We were at Monroe together. He got out 3 months before me. Martinez's eyes sharpened. Brennan. Yeah, I know him. He's on Anderson's caseload. Real piece of work. You two have problems? He thinks ex-cons should stick together, form our own community. I disagree. So he's harassing you by making it look like you're harassing her. Martinez looked at me. Miss Santos, do you understand what you're getting into? Associating with Morrison means his past becomes your present. His enemies, his restrictions, his constant surveillance. I understand, I said. Do you? Because I've seen this before. Civilian gets involved with a parolee, thinks love or friendship or whatever will be enough to overcome the system. Then reality hits. The restrictions, the check-ins, the way people look at you differently. Most civilians can't handle it. They leave, and the parolee spirals. I'm not leaving, I said firmly. Martinez studied me for a long moment. Okay. I'll make a note that you requested Morrison's assistance. I'll also reach out to Anderson about Brennan. But Morrison, you need to stay away from him. No contact, no confrontations, nothing. If he approaches you, you walk away. Understood? Yes, sir. And Miss Santos, if Brennan contacts you, you call me immediately. Don't engage, don't respond, just document and report. We clear? Clear. We left Martinez's office and walked out into the gray Seattle morning. Jake's jaw was tight, his shoulders rigid with barely controlled tension. This is exactly what Cody wanted, he said. Get Martinez involved. Put me under increased scrutiny. Limit my ability to move freely. He's boxing me in. What does he want? For me to prove I'm still who I was. Still dangerous. Still controlled by violence. If I stay calm, I'm weak. If I react, I violate parole. Either way, he wins. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. I showed Jake the screen before opening it. He nodded. I clicked the message. Your boy thinks he's smart involving the parole officers. But Anderson's useless and Martinez is overworked. They can't protect you. And Jake can't protect you without breaking his leash. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to tell him to back off, or I'm going to make sure you both understand exactly what happens when ex-cons forget their place. I screenshotted it, forwarded it to Martinez. Jake's phone rang almost immediately. Morrison, Martinez's voice came through. I just got Santos's forward. You're forwarding it to me too, right? Yes, sir. Just did. Good. This is direct evidence of harassment. I'm calling Anderson now. Brennan just put himself in violation territory. Stay away from him. Let us handle this. Jake hung up. We stood on the sidewalk outside the parole office, and I watched him war with himself. 9 years of learning patience, control, strategic thinking. All of it tested by a man who understood exactly which buttons to push. Let's go to my place, I said. We'll figure this out together. But as we walked to Jake's truck, I noticed a silver Honda parked 3 spaces down. Derek's car. He was sitting in the driver's seat watching us. Jake saw him at the same time I did. Stay behind me. Derek got out of his car, his face twisted with something between anger and vindication. So this is what you left me for. A bald ex-con with a violence record. Derek, go home, I said. No, I don't think I will. I think I'm going to stand right here in public and make sure everyone knows what kind of man you're choosing over me. He looked at Jake. How long were you inside? 9 years. What did you do? Jake didn't respond. Didn't move. Just stood between Derek and me. A wall of controlled silence. Can't even answer. Derek laughed. Yeah, that's what I thought. You know what's funny? I looked you up. Jake Morrison, beat a guy almost to death. And Emma here thinks you're some kind of hero because you scare off her ex-boyfriend. But we both know what you really are. A violent criminal one bad moment away from putting someone else in the hospital. Every word was calculated, designed to provoke, to make Jake react in public, where witnesses could see, where Martinez could hear about it within hours. Derek, I said sharply, stop. Why? Someone needs to tell you the truth. You think he's changed? Men like him don't change. They just find new targets. Right now it's me. But eventually it'll be you. And when he puts you in the hospital, don't say I didn't warn you. Jake's hands clenched into fists. I saw his breathing change, saw the muscle in his jaw twitch. 9 years of control hanging by a thread. I stepped around Jake, put myself between him and Derek. You need to leave, I said. Right now. Derek's eyes narrowed. Or what? Your attack dog's going to hurt me. Go ahead, Jake. Do it. I've got my phone recording. Give me a reason to call the cops and send you back to prison where you belong. Jake's voice, when he finally spoke, was barely above a whisper. Emma, get in the truck. Jake, now. I got in the truck. Jake followed, started the engine. Derek stood in the parking lot, phone raised, recording as we drove away. He's going to use that, I said. Make it look like you threatened him. I know. What do we do? I don't know. We drove in silence to my apartment. Inside, Jake paced while I made coffee neither of us would drink. His phone rang. Martinez. Morrison. What the hell happened outside my office? Derek Santos approached us. Made some comments. We left. He's claiming you threatened him. Says he has video evidence. I didn't threaten him. I told Emma to get in the truck, and we left. His version says you were clenching your fists, moving toward him aggressively, used a tone that made him fear for his safety. That's not what happened. I know. I pulled the parking lot surveillance. It shows exactly what you said. Him approaching you. You staying still. You leaving. But Morrison, this is the second incident in 3 days. Someone's building a case against you, and they're being smart about it. Anonymous complaints, witness statements, recordings. They're trying to make it look like you're one bad moment away from violence. It's Cody, Jake said. He's working with Derek. Has to be. I'm inclined to agree. But here's the problem. Proving conspiracy is a lot harder than proving individual violations. Right now, you're technically following the rules, but barely. And if one more thing happens, I won't have a choice. I'll have to initiate violation proceedings. Jake closed his eyes. Understood. Stay clean. Stay away from both of them. And Morrison, maybe you should consider distancing yourself from Miss Santos until this blows over. No, I said loudly enough for Martinez to hear. Miss Santos, Martinez's voice came through. I understand you care about him. But sometimes the best way to protect someone is to give them space to navigate their situation without additional complications. He's not a complication, I said. He's the only person who's actually tried to help me. Then help him by making his life simpler right now. Think about it. The call ended. Jake sat on my couch, head in his hands, his tattooed fingers threaded through the absent hair, a gesture of frustration and exhaustion that made him look younger than 32. Maybe Martinez is right, he said quietly. Maybe I should back off. Let you handle Derek on your own. Get a restraining order. Change your locks. Move if you have to. Just stay away from me until my parole's up. 3 more years? Yeah. You want me to just wait 3 years? I want you to be safe. And right now, being around me is the opposite of safe. I sat next to him on the couch. You know what I learned in the past week? Safety isn't about avoiding risk. It's about choosing which risks are worth taking, and you're worth it. Jake looked at me, and the vulnerability in his eyes was almost unbearable. I don't know how to protect you without risking my freedom, he whispered. And I don't know how to walk away from you now that I... He stopped himself. Now that you what? He didn't answer. But the silence between us was louder than any words. My phone buzzed. Another unknown number. I almost didn't check it, but something made me look. A photo. Jake and me leaving Martinez's office. Jake's hand on my lower back as he guided me toward his truck. A protective gesture. An intimate gesture. Taken from across the street with a telephoto lens. The caption? Touching her in public. Real professional. Morrison. Let's see what Martinez thinks about physical contact with civilians you're just helping. Or maybe I'll just send this to her family. Let them know their daughter's new boyfriend is a violent felon fresh out of Monroe. I showed Jake. His face went pale. Cody's documenting everything, he said. Building a narrative. Making it look like we're together, like I'm crossing boundaries, like I'm using the pretense of helping you to start a relationship in violation of my parole terms. Are those real terms? There's no specific rule against relationships. But there are rules about honesty with your parole officer. If Martinez thinks I've been lying about the nature of our relationship, that's grounds for violation. But we're not. I stopped. Were we? The way Jake looked at me, the way I'd started thinking about him, the way my chest ached when he talked about walking away. What was this, if not the beginning of something neither of us knew how to name? Jake's phone rang again. He looked at the screen and his entire body went rigid. "Who is it?" I asked. "Rachel." He answered. "Hey." I couldn't hear her side of the conversation, but I watched Jake's face go from confusion to horror to pure rage in the span of 30 seconds. "When?" he asked sharply. "How? Is she okay?" A pause. "I'm coming up there. Tonight? I don't care about the travel restriction. I'll call Martinez, get emergency permission." Another pause. Longer this time. "Rachel, I don't give a damn about my parole right now. Someone broke into your house, threatened your kids. Do you understand what that means?" My blood went cold. Jake listened for another minute, then said quietly, "I'll handle it. Keep the kids home from school tomorrow. Lock every door and window. I'll call you back." He hung up and stood perfectly still in the middle of my apartment, his hands shaking. "What happened?" I whispered. "Someone broke into Rachel's house last night while she and the kids were sleeping. Didn't take anything. Just left a note on her daughter's bed. It said," his voice cracked, "Tell your brother that family's only safe when ex-cons remember their place." The room spun. Cody hadn't just come after me. He'd gone after Jake's niece, a 6-year-old girl. "I'm going to kill him," Jake said quietly. "I'm going to drive to wherever he is, and I'm going to kill him." "Jake, no." He threatened my niece. He broke into Rachel's house. He left a note on a 6-year-old's bed. There's no coming back from that. No walking away. No letting the system handle it. I grabbed his arm. "If you do this, you go back to prison. For the rest of your sentence, plus whatever they add for assault or worse. Cody wins, you lose everything." I already lost everything. He pulled away, his voice rising for the first time since I'd known him. "I lost 9 years. I lost my parents. I lost my 20s. I lost every friend I ever had. And I was okay with that because at least Rachel was safe. At least her kids would grow up without the stain of having an uncle in prison. But now he's threatened them, and if I don't stop him, he'll keep escalating until—" He didn't finish the sentence. Didn't have to. I understood then what Cody had done. He'd found the one thing that would make Jake break. The one line that, if crossed, would destroy 9 years of careful control and send him back to being exactly what the system said he was. A violent man who couldn't be rehabilitated. "There has to be another way," I said desperately. "There isn't. Not one that keeps Rachel and her kids safe." Then we find one. Together. We document everything. We build a case. We get Cody violated and sent back inside. That takes time. Weeks, maybe months. What happens in the meantime? What happens the next time he decides to visit Rachel? The next time he leaves a note, or breaks a window, or decides threatening isn't enough? I didn't have an answer. Jake pulled out his phone, started to dial. "Who are you calling?" I asked. "Martinez. To tell him I'm driving to Spokane tonight. Parole restriction be damned. If that's a violation, fine. I'll take my chances with the hearing." "Wait," I said. "Just wait. Give me 24 hours. "For what?" "To find another way. To figure this out. If Cody's threatening Rachel, then he's making mistakes. He's exposing himself. There has to be evidence. Something we can use. Just don't do anything for 24 hours. Please." Jake looked at me with eyes that had gone flat and cold. The look, I realized, of someone who'd made a decision and was already calculating the cost. 24 hours, he said finally. "Then I handle this my way." He walked out of my apartment, got in his truck, and drove away. I stood at my window watching his taillights disappear and realized I had one day to save a man who'd spent 9 years saving himself. My phone buzzed one more time. Cody's number. "TikTok. Emma. Your boy's got 24 hours before I pay Rachel another visit. Hope he's planning something special for our reunion." I didn't sleep. Spent the entire night at my laptop researching Cody Brennan, Washington state parole violation procedures, stalking laws, anything that might give me leverage. By 4 in the morning, I had a plan. It was risky. Probably stupid. But it was the only option that didn't end with Jake back in prison or Cody dead in an alley. At 6, I called Martinez's office and left a voicemail. At 7, I called Rachel in Spokane. She answered on the second ring, her voice tight with exhaustion and fear. "Is this Emma?" she asked. "Yes. Jake told you about me. He calls every Sunday. Talks about you more than he realizes." She paused. "You're trying to stop him from coming up here?" "I'm trying to stop him from destroying his life. There's a difference. He's going to come anyway. You know that, right? Someone threatened my kids. There's no version of this where Jake stays away. What if I told you there's a way to protect your family and keep Jake out of prison?" Rachel was quiet for a moment. "I'm listening." I explained my plan. When I finished, she said, "That's either brilliant or insane. Probably both. Will you help? If it keeps my brother out of Monroe, I'll do whatever you need." At 8, Martinez called me back. I met him at his office at 9, carrying a folder I'd assembled through the night. "Miss Santos," he said as I sat down, "I got your voicemail. What's so urgent it couldn't wait until Morrison's regular check-in?" I slid the folder across his desk. "Cody Brennan broke into Jake's sister's house in Spokane last night. Left a threatening note on her daughter's bed. Jake's planning to drive up there today, which violates his travel restriction. He doesn't care. He's going to handle Cody himself, which means he's going back to prison for assault at minimum, manslaughter at worst." Martinez opened the folder. Inside were screenshots of every threatening text I'd received, the photo Cody had sent of Jake and me, Rachel's police report from last night's break-in, and a timeline connecting all of Cody's actions. "This is all circumstantial," Martinez said. "There's no direct proof Brennan's involved." "Then get proof. Call Anderson. Have him bring Cody in for questioning. Check his alibi for last night. Pull phone records. This isn't random harassment anymore. He's making interstate threats against a family with minor children. That's federal. You've been researching all night, and here's what I found. Cody Brennan has 3 years left on his parole. He's already on thin ice with Anderson for missed check-ins. If you can prove he's harassing Jake and threatening Rachel, that's immediate violation. He goes back to Walla Walla, away from both of them." Martinez studied the folder, then looked at me. "Why are you doing this? You could walk away. Let Morrison handle his own problems. Instead, you're here at 9 in the morning trying to save a man you've known for 2 weeks. Because he's worth saving. And because if he goes back to prison for this, it proves every person who said he couldn't change was right. And they're not right." Martinez leaned back in his chair. "Morrison's got 1 day before he violates his travel restriction. If I don't have Brennan contained by then, he's going to Spokane anyway, and there's nothing I can do to stop him. So contain him. It's not that simple. Anderson's caseload is 3 times what it should be. Getting him to prioritize one parolee over others, getting warrants, coordinating with Spokane PD, that takes time. Then buy time. Put Jake under house arrest or something. Give yourself 48 hours to build a case. House arrest requires a violation hearing. Morrison hasn't technically violated yet. I felt the plan crumbling. So what do we do?" Martinez was quiet for a long moment. Then he picked up his phone and dialed, "Anderson, it's Martinez. We need to talk about Cody Brennan." I listened to half a conversation that consisted mostly of Martinez saying, "I understand, but," and "this is time sensitive," and finally, "If you don't handle this today, we're going to have 2 parolees back in custody by tomorrow, and one of them will be there for a body." He hung up. "Anderson's bringing Brennan in this afternoon. Questioning only, no arrest yet. But it'll spook him, make him think twice about escalating. That buys us maybe 48 hours. And if he doesn't back off, then we hope Morrison's smart enough to wait for us to build a real case instead of becoming one himself." I left Martinez's office and drove straight to Jake's apartment. His truck was parked outside, and when he opened the door, I could see he'd been packing, a duffel bag on the bed, clothes folded with military precision. "I'm leaving in an hour," he said. "I called Rachel, told her I'm coming. Martinez is handling it. Martinez can't protect them. Neither can you if you're back in prison." I stepped inside, closed the door. Cody's being brought in for questioning this afternoon. Martinez and Anderson are coordinating. If they can prove he broke into Rachel's house, he goes back inside immediately. And if they can't prove it, then we have 48 hours to find proof ourselves. Jake shook his head. Emma, I appreciate what you're trying to do, but you don't understand what it's like to have someone threaten your family, to know they're vulnerable and you're the reason. I spent 9 years in a cell because I protected Rachel. I'm not going to sit here and wait for the system to maybe handle it while Cody plans his next move. So you're going to throw away 9 years of rehabilitation? 9 years of proving you changed? You're going to give Cody exactly what he wants. Proof that you're still violent, still dangerous, still the same person who put Travis in the hospital? If that's what it takes to keep Rachel safe? Yes. The conviction in his voice terrified me. I'd seen Jake's control, his discipline, his careful management of anger. But now I was seeing what happened when you pushed a rehabilitated man past his breaking point. The control didn't disappear. It just refocused. Became surgical. Precise. Jake, I said quietly, if you do this, you won't just go back to prison. You'll prove everyone right. Every person who said men like you can't change. Every prosecutor who argued for maximum sentences. Every parole board that denies releases. You'll become the example they point to when they say rehabilitation doesn't work. I don't care about being an example. I care about my niece not waking up to threatening notes in her bedroom. Then let me help you. Let me be your partner in this instead of something you have to protect. You want to help? Jake's voice rose slightly. Stay here. Stay safe. Let me handle Cody the way I know how, and when I'm back in Monroe, move on with your life. Find someone without a record, without enemies, without a past that keeps dragging you into danger. No. Emma, I said no. You don't get to make that decision for me. You don't get to push me away because you're scared I can't handle the consequences of caring about you. Jake's face cracked, the careful control slipping. I'm not scared you can't handle it. I'm terrified you will. That you'll wait 3 years for me to get out again. That you'll waste your 20s visiting me through glass. That you'll sacrifice your life for someone who's already lost his. The vulnerability in his voice nearly broke me. I crossed the small apartment, stood in front of him, put my hands on his chest. Then don't make me wait, I said. Don't go back. Fight smart instead of fighting hard. Trust the system one more time. And if it fails, if Cody comes after Rachel again, then we'll figure out what to do. Together. Jake's hands came up, covered mine, his scarred, tattooed fingers trembling slightly. I don't know if I can, he whispered. You spent 9 years learning how. Don't forget now. My phone rang. Martinez. Miss Santos. Brennan just left Anderson's office. Questioning didn't go well. He lawyered up immediately, denied everything. His attorney's claiming harassment from Morrison. Anderson doesn't have enough for violation proceedings yet. My heart sank. So we have nothing. Not nothing. Brennan's spooked. Anderson made it clear he's being watched. That might slow him down. Or make him desperate. Yeah, that's the risk. Keep Morrison with you. Don't let him leave King County. I'm working another angle, but I need time. The call ended. Jake had heard everything. His jaw was tight, his decision made. I'm leaving in 30 minutes, he said. You can't stop me. You're right, I can't. But think about what you're walking into. Cody wants you to come at him. He's planned for it. The moment you cross into Spokane County, you're in violation. The moment you confront him, he'll have witnesses, probably recording. You'll give him everything he needs to send you back and paint himself as the victim. I don't care. Rachel does. I called her this morning. Told her my plan. She's on board. Jake's eyes sharpened. What plan? Cody thinks you're predictable. That you'll react with violence when family's threatened. Let's prove him wrong. Let's make him come to us instead. On our terms. Where we have witnesses and cameras and documentation. How? I explained what I'd worked out with Rachel and Martinez. When I finished, Jake was quiet for a long time. That's incredibly risky, he said finally. So is driving to Spokane and assaulting a fellow parolee. If this doesn't work, then we tried. And at least you won't be back in prison when it fails. Jake looked at his duffel bag, then at me, then out the window at his truck. 9 years of consequences warring with the protective instinct that had put him in prison in the first place. 48 hours, he said. If Cody makes one more move toward Rachel, if he contacts her or drives past her house or even looks at her wrong, I'm done waiting. 48 hours, I agreed. Jake unpacked his bag. We spent the rest of the morning implementing the plan, Rachel filing an official police report with specific details. Martinez coordinating with Spokane PD for increased patrols around her house. Me posting on social media that Jake and I were staying in Seattle for the week with specific locations tagged. Making it clear Jake wasn't running. Making Cody think he'd won. That afternoon, Jake got a call from an unknown number. He put it on speaker. "Morrison?" Cody's voice poured through. "Heard you had an interesting conversation with Anderson. Trying to blame me for your problems?" "Just telling the truth." "The truth?" "The truth is you've gone soft. Trading prison loyalty for a civilian girl and suburban fantasies. It's pathetic." "What do you want, Cody?" "I want you to remember who you are, what you are. Ex-cons don't get happy endings, Jake. We don't get to play house with pretty girls and pretend the past doesn't exist. The sooner you accept that, the sooner everyone stays safe. Including Rachel?" A pause. "Especially Rachel. Beautiful family she's got. Would be a shame if something happened because her brother forgot where he came from. The threat was explicit now. Clear enough to document but vague enough to deny." "I remember exactly where I came from," Jake said quietly. "Do you?" "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means I spent 9 years learning patience. Learning to wait for the right moment. Learning that the strongest move isn't the first one. You taught me that, remember? Cell Block C. When you waited 6 months to handle that guy who disrespected you. Waited until he thought he was safe, then made your move. Silence on the other end. Then, you threatening me, Morrison. Just reminiscing. About the lessons you taught me. About patience and planning and making sure your enemy never sees you coming." Cody laughed, but it sounded forced. "Good luck with that. You've got too much to lose now. That's your weakness." The call ended. Jake looked at me, and I saw something I hadn't seen before. Not anger. Strategy. "That was risky," I said. "You basically told him you're planning something. I want him worried. Distracted. Looking over his shoulder instead of planning his next move against Rachel. Scared people make mistakes. You learned that in prison?" "I learned a lot of things in prison, including how to make someone think they've won right before they lose." My phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number, photo attachment. I opened it. My parents' house in Tacoma. Recent photo, taken from the street. Caption, "Pretty house? Your parents?" They must be so proud of their daughter's choices. My blood went cold. Jake saw my face. Took the phone. His expression hardened. "He's escalating," Jake said. "Going after everyone I care about. Or everyone who cares about you." Same thing. I called Martinez immediately. Forwarded the photo. He called back within minutes. "That's it," he said. "That's direct threat documentation. I'm calling Anderson now. We're bringing Brennan in for real this time, not just questioning. How long? Tonight, if we can locate him. Tomorrow morning at latest. Keep your parents informed. Have them file a report with Tacoma PD. Build the documentation wall." I called my parents. My mom answered, and I heard the worry in her voice before I even explained. "Emma, what's wrong?" "Mom, I need you to listen carefully. The man I've been seeing, Jake, someone from his past is threatening people close to him. That includes you and Dad. I need you to be careful. Lock the doors. Don't answer the door for strangers. I'm sending you a photo of a man named Cody Brennan. If you see him anywhere near the house, call 911 immediately." Silence. Then, "Emma, what have you gotten yourself into? I'm trying to help someone who deserves help, but it's complicated. This is because of that ex-convict, isn't it? Emma, we warned you. People like that, they bring their problems with them. Now he's brought those problems to our doorstep. Mom, Jake didn't do this. Someone else is. It doesn't matter who did it. What matters is you're in danger. We're in danger. Because you chose to involve yourself with a man who has the kind of past that attracts the kind of people who threaten families." Her words cut deep because they weren't entirely wrong. Being with Jake meant inheriting his history, his enemies, his constantly surveilled life. "I love you, Mom," I said quietly. "Please just be careful. File the report. I'll call you tomorrow." I hung up before she could argue. Jake was standing at the window, arms crossed, looking down at the street. "Your mom's right," he said without turning around. "I brought this into your life. into your family's life. The smart thing would be for you to walk away. The smart thing would be for Cody to stop threatening people. But here we are. Emma, no. I'm not having this conversation again. We're seeing this through. 48 hours. That's what you promised. Jake turned to face me. And after 48 hours, if Cody's not contained, what then? Then we make a choice. Together. He crossed the room, stood close enough that I could see the exhaustion in his eyes, the weight of 9 years and 2 weeks pressing down on him. I don't want you to have to make that choice, he said. Don't want you to have to decide between doing the right thing and protecting the people you love. That's my burden. Has been since I was 23. Then let me share it. Why? What do you get out of this except danger and judgment and a front row seat to watching the system fail someone who's trying to do everything right? Because when I looked at him, I didn't see an ex-convict or a violent man or someone society had given up on. I saw someone who'd faced the worst parts of himself and chosen to be better. Someone who'd paid for his mistakes and was still paying. Someone who deserved a second chance that kept getting ripped away. I get you, I said simply. Jake's hand came up, cupped my face. His thumb traced my cheekbone with a gentleness that contradicted everything his scarred hands suggested. I don't know how this ends, he whispered. But I know that meeting you was either the best or worst thing that could have happened on parole. Which one? Haven't decided yet. Ask me in 48 hours. His phone rang. Martinez. Morrison, we got a problem. Brennan's gone. He's not at his apartment, not at his usual spots. Anderson thinks he bolted. Either he's running scared or he's planning something final. Either way, we need to locate him before he makes his move. Jake's face went carefully blank, the look of someone preparing for war. Where's Rachel? He asked. Spokane PD has a car outside her house. She's safe for now. And Emma's parents? Tacoma PD is aware. But Morrison, we can't provide 24-hour protection for everyone. We don't have the resources. Then what do you suggest? That you trust us to do our jobs. That you don't do anything that gives Brennan more ammunition. The call ended. Jake set down his phone with exaggerated care. He's coming for one of us, Jake said. Tonight or tomorrow. He's done with threats. Now he's going to act. Then we let him. On our terms. With police and witnesses and every possible safeguard. Or we don't wait. We find him first. Jake, Emma, I know what you're trying to do. I appreciate it. But there's a point where being smart means being proactive. And we're past that point. My phone buzzed. Text from Cody. 48 hours. Jake said, I'm giving you 24. Then I'm paying Emma's parents a visit. Or maybe Rachel? Haven't decided yet. Depends on which lesson you need to learn first. I showed Jake. Watched his face transform from careful control to something cold and final. That's it, he said. I'm done playing defense. He grabbed his keys. I blocked the door. Where are you going? To find Cody before he finds our families. That's exactly what he wants. Jake, please. Think. You go after him now. You're giving him everything. The violation, the arrest, the proof you haven't changed. Then I haven't changed. Maybe everyone was right. You don't believe that? Right now? I don't know what I believe. Except that I'm not going to wait for Cody to hurt someone I care about while I hide behind parole restrictions and hope the system saves me. He moved toward the door. I didn't move. If you leave right now, I said, I'm calling Martinez. I'll tell him you're in violation. I'll do whatever it takes to stop you from throwing away 9 years of your life. Jake looked at me with something like betrayal. You'd send me back? To save you from yourself? Yes, we stood there, locked in a battle of wills neither of us knew how to win. His phone rang. Unknown number. He answered. Put it on speaker. Morrison. Cody's voice came through. Change of plans. I'm outside Emma's building right now. You've got 5 minutes to come down and talk to me like a man. Or I'm coming up. Your choice. The line went dead. Jake looked at me. I looked at him. 5 minutes. That's all the time we had to decide how this ended. Jake was already moving toward the door when I grabbed my phone and dialed 911. He stopped, turned back to look at me. What are you doing? He asked. Calling the police, creating witnesses, making sure whatever happens next is documented. I put the call on speaker. The operator answered. 911, what's your emergency? My name is Emma Santos. I'm at 1247 Pine Street, apartment 3B. There's a man named Cody Brennan outside my building who's been threatening me and my boyfriend. He just called and said he's coming up. I need police here immediately. Is he armed, ma'am? I don't know, but he's a parolee with a history of violence. My boyfriend is also a parolee. I'm afraid if they confront each other, someone's going to get hurt and both of them will end up back in prison. Officers are on their way. Stay inside. Lock your door. Don't engage. I kept the line open and called Martinez on my cell. He answered immediately. Morrison's with you? He asked. Yes. Cody's outside my building. Police are on their way. I need you here too. As a witness that Jake didn't initiate this, didn't seek confrontation, didn't violate any terms. I'm 20 minutes away. Keep him inside. Do not let him go down there. Through my window, I could see the street. Cody's truck was parked under a streetlight. He was leaning against it, arms crossed, looking up at my building, waiting. Jake stood at the window beside me. He's alone, no backup. This is his play. It's a trap, I said. He wants you to come down, wants to provoke you into hitting him where there are cameras and witnesses. Then you go back to prison and he walks away claiming self-defense. I know. So you're staying here. Jake was quiet for a moment. Then, what if I go down there and don't hit him? What if I just talk? He'll make it impossible. He'll say something about Rachel, about your niece, about me. He'll push every button until you break. Then I don't break. Jake, you're human. Everyone has a breaking point. I spent 9 years finding mine. Spent 9 years learning exactly how far I can be pushed before I react. Cody taught me that, ironically. He's good at finding weaknesses, but he's also predictable. I know his moves. The 911 operator broke in. Ma'am, officers are 3 minutes out. Is the subject still outside? I looked out the window. Yes, still by his truck. And your boyfriend is still inside with you? Yes. Good. Keep it that way. But Jake was already unlocking my door. What are you doing? I asked. Going down there before the police arrive. Talking to Cody in a way that gives me control of the narrative. That's insane. It's strategic. If I wait for the police, Cody spins it however he wants. But if I go down there now, stay calm, keep distance, and document everything on my phone, then when the police arrive, they see me de-escalating instead of escalating. He pulled out his phone, started a voice recording. I'm Jake Morrison. It's November 23rd, bar 8:47 p.m. I'm about to go talk to Cody Brennan, who's parked outside Emma Santos's building and has been threatening her and my family. I'm recording this conversation for my safety and his. I'm not carrying any weapons. I'm not going to initiate physical contact. I'm going to ask him to leave. Jake, please, I said. He looked at me. Trust me. I know what I'm doing. That's what scares me. Something softened in his expression. He crossed the room, kissed my forehead. If this goes wrong, tell Martinez I tried. Tell Rachel I'm sorry. And tell yourself that you gave someone like me something I didn't deserve, a reason to stay good. Then he was gone, walking down the stairs. I watched from the window as he emerged from my building, phone held up, clearly recording. Cody saw him and smiled. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but I saw Jake maintain distance. Saw Cody step forward. Saw Jake step back. Cody was talking, gesturing. Jake just stood there, phone up, recording everything. Then Cody said something that made Jake's entire body go rigid. Even from 3 stories up, I could see the tension. Cody laughed, said something else. Jake's free hand clenched into a fist. Don't, I whispered. Please don't. Police sirens wailed in the distance, getting closer. Cody heard them too. He made one final move, stepped into Jake's space, said something directly in his face, a final provocation, a last attempt to make Jake break. Jake lowered his phone. For one terrible moment, I thought he was going to hit him. Thought 9 years of control were about to shatter under the weight of one man's calculated cruelty. Instead, Jake turned his back on Cody and walked toward my building. Cody grabbed his shoulder, spun him around. We're not done, he said loudly enough that I could hear from my window. Yes, we are, Jake said calmly. Cody shoved him. Jake didn't react. Just let himself be pushed back a step. What's wrong, Morrison? Gone soft? Can't even defend yourself anymore? I don't need to defend myself from you. Another shove. Harder this time. Jake stumbled but didn't raise his hands. Fight back, Cody hissed. Show everyone what you really are. Police cars rounded the corner, lights flashing. 2 of them. Officers emerged. What's going on here? One of them called out. Cody immediately stepped back, hands up. Officer, this man's been harassing my girlfriend. I came here to talk to him and he got aggressive. That's not true, I yelled from my window. I called 911, that man's been threatening me. Jake came down to ask him to leave. The officers looked between them. One approached Jake. Sir, do you have ID? Jake pulled out his wallet slowly. My name's Jake Morrison. I'm on parole. My officer is Luis Martinez, and he's on his way here. I have a recording of this entire interaction on my phone. I didn't touch him. He pushed me twice. I maintained distance and tried to de-escalate. He's lying, Cody said. He came at me. I have it recorded, Jake repeated. Everything. From the moment I came outside. The officer took Jake's phone, stepped away to review the recording. Martinez's car pulled up, and he emerged looking furious and relieved in equal measure. Morrison, he said. What did I tell you? To stay inside. I know. But if I'd waited, Cody would have come up. Emma would have been in the middle. This way, I controlled where and how it happened. Martinez looked at the officers. What have we got? Recording shows Morrison maintaining distance, Brennan initiating physical contact, Morrison refusing to engage. If anyone's getting cited tonight, it's Brennan for assault. Cody's face went pale. That's not... Sir, the officer said to Cody. I need to see your ID, and I'm going to need the name of your parole officer. I watched from my window as Cody's carefully constructed plan collapsed. As officers questioned him, as Martinez vouched for Jake, as the documentation wall we'd built proved stronger than Cody's manipulations, Jake looked up at my window. Even from this distance, I could see the exhaustion in his posture, the weight of 9 years and one final test. He'd passed. Barely. But he'd passed. 45 minutes later, Jake was back in my apartment. Cody was in custody for parole violation. Anderson was on his way to process the paperwork. Martinez sat on my couch looking simultaneously impressed and annoyed. You took a hell of a risk, he said to Jake. I know. Could have gone wrong in a dozen ways. I know. But you kept your head, didn't engage, let him bury himself. Martinez shook his head. Maybe you have changed. Jake looked at me. I had a good reason not to break. After Martinez left, after the police cleared out, after Cody's truck was towed and my street returned to normal, Jake and I sat on my couch in silence. What did he say? I finally asked. Down there? What did Cody say that almost made you hit him? Jake was quiet for a long moment. He said that Emma was too good for me. That eventually you'd realize it and leave. And that when you did, it would destroy me worse than prison ever could. And what did you think? I thought he was probably right, and I decided I didn't care. That even if this all falls apart, having you believe in me for however long it lasts is worth whatever comes after. I took his scarred, tattooed hand. Then I guess we'll figure out what comes after. Together. Cody Brennan was sent back to Walla Walla State Penitentiary 3 days later. Parole violation, assault, interstate threats against minors. Anderson had built a case that even Cody's lawyer couldn't talk away. The judge revoked his parole entirely. He'd serve the rest of his original sentence plus additional time. 7 years minimum before he'd see another parole hearing. Jake and I sat in Martinez's office when the news came through. I watched the tension drain from Jake's shoulders like someone had cut invisible wires holding him upright. 9 years of fighting to prove he'd changed, culminating in 1 week where everything he'd built nearly collapsed. And somehow, impossibly, he'd survived it. Morrison, Martinez said, leaning back in his chair. I've been doing this job for 15 years. I've seen maybe 5 parolees who genuinely rehabilitated themselves. You're one of them. Don't make me regret believing that. I won't, sir. And Miss Santos? Martinez looked at me. You're either the bravest or most foolish woman I've met. Maybe both. But you kept him out of prison when he was determined to go back. That counts for something. We left the parole office and walked to Jake's truck in silence. The Seattle rain had started again, light and persistent, the kind that soaks through everything if you stand in it long enough. Jake opened the passenger door for me, a small gesture of care that made my chest ache. Where to? he asked as he started the engine. Spokane, I said. I think it's time I met Rachel properly. Jake looked at me, surprise flickering across his face. You want to meet my sister? And your niece and nephew? I want to see the family you protected. The reason you spent 9 years in prison. The people who kept you human when the system tried to make you something else. We drove to Spokane that weekend. Jake had gotten permission from Martinez for the travel, a small victory, a sign that trust was being rebuilt. Rachel's house was a modest split level in a quiet neighborhood, the kind of place where kids rode bikes in cul-de-sacs and neighbors knew each other's names. Rachel opened the door before we even knocked. She was smaller than I'd imagined, with Jake's eyes and a warmth that seemed to radiate from her entire being. She looked at her brother for one long moment, then threw her arms around him. You scared me, she whispered into his shoulder. I thought I was going to lose you again. I'm sorry, Jake said quietly. I'm so sorry. Don't apologize for protecting us. That's what you've always done. She pulled back, looked at me. And you must be Emma, the woman who saved my brother from himself. I just reminded him of what he already knew, I said. That's exactly what he needed. Come in. The kids are dying to meet Uncle Jake's girlfriend. The word hung in the air. Girlfriend. Jake and I hadn't defined what we were, too busy surviving to label it, but Rachel had named it, and neither of us corrected her. Jake's niece, Lily, was 6 years old with pigtails and missing front teeth. His nephew, Connor, was 8 and trying very hard to be cool about meeting his uncle's new girlfriend, but failing adorably. They tackled Jake with hugs, and I watched this bald, tattooed man who'd spent 9 years in prison transform into someone gentle and patient, and utterly devoted to 2 kids who didn't see his past, only his presence. Over dinner, Rachel told stories about Jake teaching her to ride a bike when their parents were working double shifts, about him working 2 jobs at 19 to help pay for her community college, about the night he'd put Travis in the hospital, how she'd testified at his trial begging the judge for leniency, how she'd written him letters every single week for 9 years without fail. He never missed a birthday, Rachel said, looking at her kids. Even from prison, even with nothing, he always made sure you got cards, drew them himself because he couldn't afford to buy them. Lily ran to get a shoebox full of cards, crayon drawings of birthday cakes and flowers and stick figures. Jake's handwriting in careful print. Happy 3rd birthday, Lily. Uncle Jake loves you. See you soon. Year after year. Promises of ice soon that took 9 years to fulfill. After the kids went to bed, Rachel, Jake's and I sat on the back porch with coffee. The Spokane night was clearer than Seattle, stars visible between clouds. Thank you, Rachel said to me, for seeing him, really seeing him. Not the conviction, not the record, just Jake. It wasn't hard, I said honestly. Once I looked past what everyone told me to see. Most people can't do that. Most people hear violent felon, and that's all they need to know. You asked questions. You stayed when you could have run. You believed in second chances when the world said he didn't deserve one. Everyone deserves a second chance, I said. Not everyone takes it, Jake said quietly. I met hundreds of guys inside who never changed, who went right back to what they were doing before, who blamed everyone but themselves. I almost became one of them. What stopped you? I asked. Rachel's letters, and the understanding that Travis didn't deserve what I did to him. He was an abuser, yeah, but I went too far. And spending 9 years hating myself for that taught me the difference between justice and revenge, between protection and destruction. We sat in comfortable silence. 3 people who'd been marked by violence in different ways, finding something like peace together. 6 months later, Jake's parole restrictions eased. He got approved for night classes at Seattle Central College, enrolled in the welding program, started building a legitimate future with skills and certifications instead of just survival instincts. Derek disappeared from my life entirely after Cody's arrest. Apparently having a violent ex-con threatening you by association was enough to make him reconsider his harassment campaign. He moved to Portland. I didn't miss him. My parents came around slowly. My mom first. She met Jake at a coffee shop on neutral ground, asked him direct questions, listened to direct answers, heard about Rachel and the kids, and the 9 years and the daily choice to be better than his worst moment. I don't like that my daughter's dating an ex-convict, she said finally, but I like that she's dating a man who takes responsibility for his actions and protects the people he loves. My dad took longer, But the day he shook Jake's hand and said, "Take care of my daughter," I knew we'd crossed some invisible threshold. A year after that night outside my apartment, Jake finished his welding certification, got hired at a maritime shipyard in Seattle, union job, good pay, benefits. Moved out of the studio above the Vietnamese restaurant into a one-bedroom apartment in Beacon Hill with actual furniture and a bookshelf he built himself. I helped him move, and as we unpacked boxes, I found the Marcus Aurelius book he'd been reading that first day in the laundromat. The pages were falling out, held together with tape and hope. "You should get a new copy," I said. "No. That one got me through 9 years. It stays." We hung his GED diploma on the wall next to a photo of Rachel's family. Evidence of survival and rebuilding. Proof that second chances weren't just given, they were earned one careful choice at a time. 2 years after I opened my door to a tattooed stranger delivering a burger, Jake's parole ended. Just ended. No more check-ins with Martinez. No more travel restrictions or curfews or constant surveillance. He was free in a way he hadn't been since he was 23 years old. We celebrated with Rachel and the kids in Spokane. Simple dinner, nothing fancy. But watching Jake play with his niece and nephew without having to check the time, without having to worry about curfew violations, without carrying the weight of the system's constant judgment, that was everything. That night, sitting on Rachel's back porch under the same stars, Jake turned to me. "I need to tell you something," he said. "Okay. When you opened your door 2 years ago and I saw that bruise on your wrist, I knew I had two choices: walk away and stay invisible, or step in and risk everything I'd built. I told myself I was just helping someone who needed help. But the truth is, I needed help too. I needed a reason to believe I was more than my worst mistake. Jake, let me finish. You gave me that. You looked at a bald ex-con covered in prison tattoos and you saw someone worth trusting, worth defending, worth fighting for. You stood between me and my own destruction more times than I can count, and I realized something." "What?" "That second chances aren't about erasing the past. They're about finding someone who sees your past and chooses your future anyway." He pulled something from his pocket. A small box. My heart stopped. "I'm not asking you to forget what I did," Jake said. "I'm not asking you to ignore the fact that I'll always be a felon, that background checks will always flag me, that some people will always judge you for choosing me. I'm asking if you can see who I'm trying to be. And if that's someone you want to build a life with." I looked at this man who'd spent 9 years becoming someone worthy of a second chance, who'd learned that strength wasn't about violence but restraint, who'd walked away from provocation and chosen documentation over destruction, who'd protected his family and his future, and somehow, impossibly, found room to protect me too. "I see you," I said, echoing words I'd spoken 2 years ago. "That's still the problem. Problem, because now I can't unsee you. Can't imagine my life without you in it. Can't picture a future where I don't get to watch you keep becoming the person you're meant to be." Jake smiled, a real smile, unguarded and hopeful. "Is that a yes?" "That's a yes." He slipped the ring on my finger. Simple silver band, nothing fancy. But it represented something more valuable than diamonds, a future built on truth instead of fantasy. A love that had survived judgment and threat and the weight of the past. We got married 6 months later in a small ceremony at a park in Seattle. Rachel was my maid of honor. Martinez came as a guest, which felt both appropriate and surreal. My parents walked me down the aisle. Lily and Connor were flower girl and ring bearer, taking their jobs very seriously. Jake stood at the altar in a suit that didn't quite hide his tattoos, his bald head catching the late afternoon sun, his scarred hand steady as I placed a ring on his finger and promised to choose him every day for the rest of our lives. At the reception, Martinez pulled me aside. "You did good," he said. "Both of you did good. It's rare to see it work out like this." "What made the difference?" I asked. He wanted to change. Most parolees don't. They just want to survive their sentence and go back to what they know. Morrison wanted to be different, and you gave him a reason to stay different. That's the combination that saves people: internal motivation and external support. I looked across the reception at Jake, who was dancing with Lily, letting her stand on his feet while Connor took pictures with a disposable camera. A bald, tattooed ex-con who'd paid for his mistakes with 9 years of his life, now building a future one careful choice at a time. Thank you, I said to Martinez, for believing in him when the system said not to. Thank you for proving the system wrong. Jake and I moved into a 2-bedroom apartment in Ballard. Nothing fancy, but it was ours. No parole officers, no restrictions, just 2 people learning how to be together without crisis or threat or constant surveillance. We had Sunday dinners with my parents, visited Rachel and the kids once a month. Jake taught welding at a community program for formerly incarcerated people, helping others navigate the impossible gap between prison and freedom. I went back to school for social work, specializing in re-entry programs. Our life wasn't perfect. Some people still judged. Some job applications still got rejected when background checks came back. Some family friends disappeared when they learned about Jake's past. But we built something real anyway, something honest, something that proved second chances weren't just possible, they were worth fighting for. 3 years after our wedding, we were sitting on our couch on a quiet Sunday evening. Jake was reading Seneca again, a new copy I'd bought him, though he still kept the old one. I was grading papers for a class I was teaching. Rain hammered against our windows. Seattle being Seattle. Emma, Jake said quietly. Yeah? I never thanked you properly. For that first night. For letting me in. For trusting me when you had every reason not to. You've thanked me 1,000 times. Not for the right thing. He set down his book. I didn't just walk into your apartment that night. I walked into a second chance at life, at being human, at believing I could be more than the worst thing I'd ever done. You gave me that, and I'm going to spend the rest of my life trying to deserve it. I set down my papers, moved closer to him on the couch. His arm came around me automatically, a gesture of protection and affection that had become our normal. You already deserve it, I said. You earned it every day for 9 years. I just reminded you that the work was worth it. Still, thank you for seeing me, for staying, for choosing this life when you could have had an easier one. Easier isn't better, I said. This is better. You are better. We sat there in our small apartment, 2 people who'd found each other in impossible circumstances and decided that second chances were worth the fight. Outside, Seattle rain fell on a city full of people carrying their own pasts, trying to build their own futures. And inside, a bald ex-con who'd delivered a burger and stayed forever held the woman who'd let him in. And together we built a life that proved redemption wasn't just a word. It was a choice you made every single day. The evening light caught the edges of Jake's tattoos, transforming the marks of his past into art in the present. His bald head rested against mine. Both of us quiet, both of us home. Thank you, he whispered one more time, for teaching me what redemption looks like. I laced my fingers through his scarred, tattooed hands and said what I'd learned in 2 years of loving him. You taught yourself. I just loved you while you did it. If you made it to the end of this story, let us know in the comments which city you're watching from. And click the yellow bell to subscribe to the channel and support us. Keep the adventure going by clicking on the suggested video on your screen.